After being safe during this COVID-19 and practicing social distancing and being at home, I've had a couple of people reach out to me and ask me how can they actively keep their child engaged during this time with no school. And so I thought, why not read a book? So this book is Serafina and the Black Cloak. It is written by Robert Beatty. The setting of this book is at Biltmore Estate, and so how beautiful is that? This book is going to bring in some of that history from that area. Actually got to meet Robert Beatty a couple of years ago where he was doing a book signing at Barnes & Noble in West Knoxville, so that was good to fun. It says, "To Miss Kelsey Taylor, always keep reading." So that is what we're going to do during this time where we are not allowed to be with anyone or at school learning, is going to be reading. So I have made a PowerPoint where I put myself reading on one side and then some questions on the other. So if you and your family would like to go over those questions together and talk about what's happening in the book and things like that, that's a great time to just get in a little bit of learning every day. Alright everyone, we're going to read chapter 1, Still Practicing Social Distancing, and just am outside today because it is so beautiful. So here we go, chapter 1. Serafina opened her eyes and scanned the darkened workshop, looking for any rat stupid enough to come into her territory while she slept. She knew that they were out there, just beyond her nightly range, crawling in the cracks and shadows of the great house-spawning basement, keen to steal whatever they could from the kitchen and storerooms. She had spent most of the day napping in her favorite out-of-the-way places, but it was here, curled up on an old mattress behind the rusty boiler in the protection of the workshop, that she felt most at home. Hammers, wrenches, and gears hung down from the rough hue beams, and the familiar smell of machinery oil filled the air. Her first thought as she looked around her and listened out into the reaching darkness was that it felt like a good night for hunting. Her pa, who had worked on the construction of Biltmore Estate years before, had lived in the basement without permission ever since. Lay sleeping on the cot he'd secretly built. Behind the supply racks, embers glowed in the old metal barrel which he had cooked their dinner of chicken and grits a few hours before. He had huddled around the cook fire for warmth as they ate. As usual, she had eaten the chicken but left the grits. "Eat your supper," her pa had grumbled. "Did," she had answered, setting down her half-empty tin plate. "Your whole supper," he said, pushing the plate towards her, "or you're never gonna get any bigger than a little shoat." Her pa likened her to a skinny baby pig when he wanted to get a rise out of her, figuring she wolfed those nasty grits down her throat to spite herself. "I'm not gonna eat the grits, Pa," she said, smiling a little, "no matter how many times you put them in front of me." "They ain't nothing but ground-up corn, girl," he said, poking at the fire with his stick to arrange the other sticks the way that he wanted them. "Everybody and his uncle likes corn except you. You know, I can't stomach anything green or yellow or disgusting like that, Pa, so quit hollering at me." "If I was hollering, you'd know it," he said, shoving his poker stick into the fire. By and by, they soon forgot about the grits and went on to talk about something else. It made Serafina smile to think about her dinner with her father. She couldn't imagine much anything else in the world except maybe sleeping in the warmth of one of the basement's small sunlight windows. That's finer than a bit of a banter with her pa. Careful not to wake him, she slinked out her mattress and padded across the workshop's gritty stone floor and snuck into one of the winding passageways. While still rubbing the sleep out of her eyes and stretching out her arms and legs, she couldn't help but feel a trace of excitement. The tantalizing sensation of starting a brand new night tingled through her body. She felt her muscles and her senses coming alive, as if she were an owl stirring its wings and flexing its talons before it flies off for its ghostly hunt. She moved quietly through the darkness, past the laundry rooms, pantries, and kitchen, The basement had just been bustling with servants all day, but their rooms were empty now, and dark, just the way she liked them. She knew that the Vanderbilts and their many guests were sleeping on the second and third floors above her, but here it was quiet. She loved to prowl through its endless corridors and shadows of storage rooms. She knew the touch and feel and glint and gloom in every nook and cranny. This was her domain at night, and hers alone. She heard a faint slithering just ahead. The night was beginning quickly. She stopped. She listened. The 2 doors down, the scrambling of tiny feet on the bare floor. She crept forward along the wall, and when the sound stopped, she stopped as well. And when the sound resumed, she crept forward once more. It was a technique that she had taught herself by the age of 7. Move when they're moving, stay still when they're still. Now she could hear the creatures breathing and scratching of their toenails on the stone and dragging their tails. She felt the familiar trembling in her fingers and the tightness in her legs. She slipped through the half-open door into the stone room and saw them in the darkness. 2 huge rats covered in greasy brown fur had slithered one by one through the drain pipes. In the floor, the intruders were obviously newcomers, foolishly scrounging for cockroaches when they could have been slurping custards off the fresh-baked pastries just down the hall. Without making a sound or even disturbing the air, she stalked slowly towards the rats. Her eyes focused on them. Her ears picked up every sound they made. She could even smell their foul sewer stench. All the while she went about their rotten, ratty business and had no idea that she was there. She stopped just a few feet behind them, hidden in the blackness of a shadow, poised for a leap. This was the moment she loved, and the moment just before she lunged. Her body swayed slightly back and forth, turning her angle of attack. Then she pounced. In one quick, explosive movement, she grabbed the squealing, withering rats with her bare hands. "Gotcha, you nasty varmints," she hissed. The smaller rats squirmed in terror, desperate to get away, but the larger one twisted around and bit her hand. "There'll be none of that," she snarled, clamping the rat's neck firm between her finger and thumb. The rats wiggled wildly, but she kept a good, hard hold on them and wouldn't let go of them. It had taken her a while to learn that lesson when she was younger, that once you had them, you had to squeeze hard and hold on no matter what, even if their little claws scratched you and their scaly tails curled around your hand like some sort of gray, nasty snake. Finally, after several seconds of vicious struggling, an exhausted rat realized that he couldn't escape her. They went still and stared suspiciously at her with their beady black eyes. Their shriveled little noses and wicked long whiskers vibrated with fear. The rat who had bit her slowly slithered its long, scaly tail around her wrist, wrapping it 2 times, searching for a new advantage to pry himself free. "Don't even try it," she warned him. Still bleeding from his bite, she was in no mood for this ratty scheme. She had been bitten before, but she had never did like it much. Carrying the gristling beasts in her clenched fist, she took them down the passageway. It felt good to get the 2 rats before midnight, and they were particularly ugly characters. The kind that would chew straight through the burlap sack to get to the grain inside, or knock eggs off the shelf so that they could lick the mess from the floor. She climbed the old stone stairs that led outside, then the way to the edge of the forest. There she hurled the rats into the leaves. "Now get out of here and back," she shouted. The rats tumbled, and when it didn't take longer, the rats scurried into the underbrush. There had been a time when the rats she caught weren't so lucky. when she'd leave their bodies next to her pa's bed to show him her night's work. But she hadn't done that in a coon's age. Ever since she was a youngin', she had studied the men and women who worked in the basement, so she knew that each one had a particular job. It was her father's responsibility to fix the elevators, the dumbwaiters, the window gears, steam heating systems, and all of the other mechanical contraptions on which the 250-room mansion depended. He even made sure that the pipe organ in the grand banquet hall worked properly for Mr. and Mrs. Vanderbilt's fancy balls. Besides Pa, there were cooks, kitchen maids, coal shovelers, chimney sweeps, laundry women, pastry makers, housemaids, footmen, and countless others. When she was 10 years old, she had asked Pa, "Do I have a job like everyone else, Pa?" "Of course you do," he said, but as she suspected, that wasn't true. He just didn't want to hurt her feelings. "Well, what is it? What is my job?" she pressed. "It's actually an extremely important position around here, and there ain't no one who does it better than you, Sarah." "Tell me, Pa, what is it?" "I reckon you're the Biltmore State's CRC." "What's that mean?" she said in excitement. "You're the chief rat catcher," he said. However, the words were intended, and they embezzled themselves in her mind. She remembered even now, 2 years later, how her little chest had swelled and how she had smiled with pride when he had said those words, "Chief Rat Catcher." She had liked the sound of that. Everyone knew that rodents were a big problem in the palace like Biltmore, with all of its sheds and shelves and barns and whatnot, and it was true that she had shown a natural-born talent for snatching the cunning, food-stealing, dropping-leaving, disease-infected four-legged vermins that so indulged in the adult folk with her crude straps and poisons. Mice were timid and prone to panic-induced mistakes at the key moments, were no trouble for her at all to catch. It was the rats that gave her a scamper each night, and it was the rats that she had honed her skills. She was 12 years old now, and that's who she was, Serafina, CRC. But as she watched the